In the sleepy town of Millfield, Pennsylvania, the winter wind had a way of whispering secrets. Half-heard stories buried beneath snowbanks in time. Life moved at the pace of a slow church hymn. The loudest sound most evenings was the creak of porch swings, or the rhythmic clink of a kid's bike chain spinning down a frostbitten sidewalk. This wasn't the kind of place where bad things happened. At least, not the kind that made national headlines or Netflix docuseries. But all of that changed on December 14, 2017, when Elise Brenner vanished. 17 years old, straight-A student, the kind of girl who got thank you notes from teachers for being a joy to have in class. She wasn't the popular girl, not quite. She floated on the periphery, respected, even liked, but not always understood. Elise had a quiet intensity, a restless curiosity, and a camera that never left her side. She had a fascination with forgotten things. Abandoned places, rusting buildings, photos where the light filtered through broken glass like stained windows in a cathedral. Elise could see the beauty in rot, the story in silence. Her Instagram, with just under 1,200 followers, was filled with moody shots of boarded-up train stations, hollowed-out farmhouses, and whatever else Millfield's decaying skeleton had to offer. But that Thursday night, when she told her mom she was heading out to photograph the Glenridge Asylum ruins, something about the way she said it felt off. Not the words, those were normal enough. It was the way she grabbed her coat like it was armor. The way she hesitated before she said, "I'll be back by 9. She never was. First, nobody panicked. Not really. Elise was a responsible kid. Her mom, Rachel Brenner, assumed maybe she had lost track of time. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she was getting just one more shot. Elise's usual excuse when she was chasing the right light. But by 10:30, the unease turned sharp. Cold. Rachel called. Straight to voicemail. Called again. Still nothing. By midnight, the fear had crystallized into action. Rachel called 911. The Millfield Police Department wasn't exactly built for this kind of thing. The last big case they'd handled was a tractor theft in 2015. Missing persons? That was usually someone's cousin who forgot to tell their parole officer they'd moved to Erie. But this? A 17-year-old girl. Gone. Without a trace. In December, Officer Greg Trammell was first on the scene. He took the report, asked the routine questions, and logged the call as a possible juvenile runaway. Rachel exploded. Elise doesn't run away. She doesn't sneak out. She doesn't lie to me. If she's not home, something's wrong. Still, the narrative took hold. She was a teenager. Teenagers do unpredictable things. She probably needed space. She'd be back by morning. Only she wasn't. By sunrise, a team of volunteers had gathered. Neighbors, teachers, classmates. They scoured the snowy fields near Glenridge. They combed the half-frozen creek beds, walked through woods where bare branches clawed at coats and hats like skeletal fingers. But they found nothing. No footprints, no tire tracks, no broken branches, no camera, no Elise. Then came the first chilling twist. Elise's phone records, obtained 2 days later, didn't show her going to Glenridge. The last ping from her phone wasn't from anywhere near the asylum. It came from a cell tower in Lockwood, a small town 20 miles east. A town Elise had no known connections to. No friends there. No relatives. No photo locations tagged on her Instagram. Just a rural, wooded town most Millfield kids only heard about when they took the wrong bus during football season. And then, nothing. No more pings. No text messages. No social media activity. The phone went silent. Permanently. At this point, the case exploded beyond Millfield. Local media picked it up first. A quiet honors student vanishes en route to a haunted asylum. It had the kind of eerie symmetry journalists salivate over. Then national outlets latched on. The Millfield Mystery, they called it. Elise's face was suddenly everywhere. On missing posters, on morning shows, on Facebook groups where armchair detectives dissected every blurry photo and timeline. People were captivated, not just by her disappearance, but by how little sense it made. There was no sign of a struggle, no witnesses, no trace of Elise's camera or backpack, no ransom notes, No cryptic social media posts. The day she disappeared, Elise had attended school like normal. She submitted an essay in AP Literature titled The Elegy of Forgotten Places. Her teacher, Mr. Halvorsen, said it read like a goodbye. That sent a new wave of speculation rippling through the case. Was this a suicide? A staged disappearance? Or was someone else writing Elise's final chapter? Detective Marla Vasquez was brought in from Harrisburg. Known for solving a string of cold cases involving missing teens, she had a reputation for cutting through red tape with surgical precision. She wasn't swayed by emotion. She was methodical, clinical, borderline robotic. And she hated media attention. Vasquez took over the investigation 12 days after Elise went missing. Her first move? Pull every digital file Elise had ever touched. Emails, texts, search history, GPS logs, socials, cloud backups. What she found only deepened the mystery. On the morning of her disappearance, Elise had Googled Glenridge Asylum blueprints. Best time to shoot at dusk December PA. What's east of Millfield? That last one raised eyebrows. Why would she Google that if she was supposedly headed west to Glenridge? Even stranger, Elise's final known photo, taken at 4:42 p.m. and auto-backed up to her cloud, showed a long, two-lane road cutting through woods, snow dusting the branches, and a dark figure, blurry and half-obscured, standing at the road's edge. No one recognized the location. It wasn't Glenridge. It wasn't Millfield. And Elise had captioned the photo, "There's something wrong with the light here." That's when theories began to multiply like mold in the dark. Some said Elise had stumbled onto a secret she wasn't supposed to see. An illegal dump site, a drug lab, a cult. Others claimed the photo had supernatural qualities. Reddit threads speculated wildly. A shadow person, a glitch in reality, a ghost of Glenridge. One user zoomed in and claimed the figure had no face. Another swore they saw a second figure, reflected faintly in the snow. The FBI was notified. They were less interested in ghosts and more interested in patterns. And sure enough, Elise wasn't the first. Records unearthed by Vasquez uncovered 2 other missing persons cases in the Lockwood area over the past 15 years. Both were teens. Both vanished in winter. Both had been en route to somewhere else when their signal was last traced near Lockwood. Neither were ever found. But here's where it gets chilling. Each of those cases had a similar digital artifact, a final photo uploaded minutes before vanishing. In one, a girl named Stephanie Hale, aged 16, had uploaded a blurry shot of trees in heavy fog with the caption, "I think I'm being followed." The other, a boy named Jared Kelman, 18, had posted an audio clip on his Instagram story of wind, and what some say is whispering underneath it. It was tagged simply, "Near Lockwood." Both photos vanished along with them. No bodies, no explanations, just 2 data points lost in time, until Elise. Vasquez began to wonder, was this part of a pattern, or something worse? Back in Millfield, Rachel Brenner was drowning in grief and guilt. She refused to take down Elise's posters. She slept in her daughter's room. She answered every spam call hoping it might be the one. The media hounded her. Conspiracy theorists sent her maps. Psychics mailed her hand-drawn sketches. She started receiving strange letters. Typed, "No return address," each one postmarked from different towns. The first letter read, "She went looking for ghosts, but something found her first." Another, a week later, "3 roads meet where the trees lean left." Police were stumped. The handwriting was machine perfect. No prints, no DNA. But the implication was clear. Someone knew something, or someone wanted them to think they did. Then came the break. 2 weeks after Elise vanished, a local hunter in Lockwood stumbled across a torn piece of red fabric near an old fire road. Under it, a cracked camera lens. It matched Elise's Canon. The SD card? Miraculously intact. Vasquez reviewed the contents personally. Hundreds of images. Some familiar Millfield rooftops, broken glass, long shadows. But toward the end, the photos changed. The last 10 shots were rapid fire, taken within 30 seconds. A dense grove of trees, a blur of movement, something black in the distance. A closer view, trees leaning unnaturally. The ground, Elise's shadow, long and distorted. The figure closer, hunched. The same figure now looking at the camera. A pair of headlights in the distance. Snow-disturbed footprints. The camera tilted mid-fall. Black, partial hand in frame. And then nothing. What happened to Elise Brenner? That's the question that will haunt Millfield for generations. Because just when investigators thought they were circling in on the truth, on whoever or whatever waited for Elise in those woods, the case took one final, horrifying turn. On March 2nd, 2018, nearly 3 months after she vanished, someone logged into Elise's Instagram, just for a moment. A single post appeared on her story. A photo never seen before, blurry, dim, almost sepia-toned. It showed what looked like a room, small and windowless. One chair, one light bulb, and the caption, "This isn't over." 3 weeks after Elise Brenner vanished, the case had gone cold. Leads evaporated. Tips led nowhere. The town of Millfield slowly settled back into uneasy silence. For all the press, posters, and social media blitzes, Elise's trail had iced over, both literally and figuratively, until a mail carrier named Darla Pruitt did something most people wouldn't. She paid attention. It was January 4th, 2018, 3.5 feet of snow on the ground and more falling. Darla had worked her Lockwood route for 12 years. She knew every porch mat, every lazy Labrador, every widow who'd send her off with a thermos of cocoa. So when she noticed that the house at 117 Hollow Pine Road hadn't been shoveled, not once, not even on Christmas, her antennae went up. No tire tracks, no footprints, no garbage bins dragged to the curb, no lights, no movement. And yet, for the past 2 weeks, someone had been collecting the mail. She called it in. The welfare check happened later that afternoon. Officer Will Connolly and Deputy Shannon Rourke rolled up the long, winding drive in a whiteout storm. The house was a 2-story colonial, modest, faded yellow paint curling like old wallpaper. The front porch sagged. The mailbox overflowed with envelopes and yellowing catalogs. But what struck them immediately was the cold. Not the outside cold, the cold inside. Because when they knocked, no answer. When they opened the door, no resistance. And when they stepped inside, every window was wide open. The wind howled through the house like it had been invited. There was no furniture, no dishes, no art, no rugs, no electronics, just blank walls and echoing floors, as if someone had exorcised the entire interior of personality. All that remained was one item in the dead center of the living room. Camera, mounted on a tripod, still recording. Connolly and Rourke stared at it like it might bite. It was a vintage model, early 2000s Canon Mini DV camcorder, the kind used for weddings and amateur ghost hunts. It had been running long enough that the tape had auto-looped and re-recorded over itself. But it was on. Battery pack wired into a wall socket. Red light blinking. A single cable led to a small monitor. The officers looked. The screen showed the empty room, identical to the one they stood in. Same angle, same shadows, just one difference. In the recorded footage, there was a person standing in the corner. The figure wasn't facing the camera. It stood near the far wall, unmoving, hooded, slight frame, no visible face, just there. Rourke tapped the monitor. Static buzzed for half a second. When the image returned, the person was gone, and on the floor where they'd been, Polaroid, real world, right in front of the camera, like it had been left just moments before. Connolly bent to pick it up. His gloved hand shook. The Polaroid showed a girl. Long dark hair, pale face, dazed eyes. She was sitting on a chair. Concrete walls. One hanging light bulb above. It matched the room posted to Elise Brenner's Instagram story. Same shadows, same bulb, same expressionless stare. But this wasn't a still frame. This was a print, a physical copy, a message. The house was sealed within the hour. Crime scene tape went up. Forensics were called in. Every square inch was dusted, swept, UV scanned. No fingerprints, no blood, no signs of forced entry, and no trace of Leonard Voss, the man who owned the house. Who was Leonard Voss? On paper, Leonard Voss was ordinary. Too ordinary. A 64-year-old antique dealer, originally from Lancaster County, who'd relocated to Lockwood in 2009. He kept a small storefront on Main Street called Voss Antiquities, a dusty little cave of Victorian furniture, war memorabilia, and unsettling porcelain dolls. He was well-spoken, quiet, formerly married, no children, clean record, paid taxes, kept to himself. But Voss hadn't been seen since December 12th, 2 days before Elise went missing. His shop was locked, his utilities unpaid, his phone disconnected. Neighbors said they hadn't noticed he was gone. Leonard was the kind of man who could be invisible in a crowd of 3, one said. But then Vasquez got hold of his inventory logs, and something stood out. In October of 2017, Voss had sold a collection of vintage cameras to a collector in Ohio. Every one accounted for, except one, a Canon Mini DV camcorder, the same model found in the Hollow Pine house. Then came the discovery in the basement. Behind a panel in the far wall, forensics found a crawl space, a claustrophobic tunnel just 4 feet high, lined with crumbling insulation and the scent of mildew and copper. At the end of the crawl space, a locked iron hatch, no key, heavy rust, bolted from the outside. Once forced open, the hatch revealed a tiny, windowless chamber, cement floor, soundproofed walls. Inside, a folding chair, a bare mattress, a single light bulb, and on the wall, scratched into concrete, "See what I see," etched beneath it over and over a single symbol. The room was empty. No blood, no hair, no trace evidence. But it was cold, unnaturally cold. Forensic thermometers registered it at 18 degrees Fahrenheit, despite the rest of the basement being a steady 41. The theory? A soundproof holding cell, built by Voss, used for who knows how long. And the worst part? The camera in the living room? Its lens had a direct line of sight to the hatch, like it had been watching for something to come out. Back at Police HQ, Vasquez watched the recovered camcorder footage for hours. Most of it was mundane. Empty room, shifting light patterns, snowflakes blurring the windows. But in 2 separate clips, the same hooded figure appeared. Once at 3:17 a.m. on December 15th, the night Elise disappeared. And once more at 3:17 a.m. on December 28th. Each time, they entered the frame from the left, stood silently, then moved out of view. Like clockwork, like ritual, the media frenzy reignited. "The Lockwood Dungeon," headlines screamed. "YouTuber discovers clues in Voss video" trended for a week. One TikTok user reverse-engineered the frequency of the camera timestamps and claimed the footage contained embedded Morse code, spelling the word resolve. Another claimed that if you played the audio backwards, you could hear a girl whispering, "It's underneath." Whether coincidence, pareidolia, or something more sinister, the hysteria became fuel. But Vasquez didn't chase ghosts. She chased Voss. Interpolated security footage from a gas station in Honesdale, Pennsylvania, 75 miles north, picked up a man resembling Voss 2 days after his last known sighting. He was wearing a cap, sunglasses, and a scarf. He bought a burner phone and paid in cash. Then he disappeared again. But his purchase triggered a federal trace. And what they found sent the investigation into overdrive. The burner phone had only ever made one call, to a voicemail inbox in Vermont registered to a shell company, Crooked Hollow Holdings LLC. And that company had rented 3 different storage units across 3 states in the last 2 years. One in Lockwood, one in Clark Summit, one in Stowe, Vermont, all under the name E. Voss. The Lockwood unit was opened first. Inside, more cameras, stacks of unlabeled tapes, and dozens of Polaroids, each showing different young women, sitting in the same room Elise had appeared in. Same chair, same light, same vacant stare. Some looked terrified, others dazed. Drugged? None identified, except one. In the back of the pile, Stephanie Hale, missing since 2010. And just behind her photo, a receipt, dated December 5th, 2017, for one disposable phone, shipped to a P.O. box in Millfield, Pennsylvania, addressed to Elise Brenner. So now the case had changed again. Elise didn't stumble into something by accident. She had been targeted, watched, studied, possibly lured. The FBI, now fully embedded in the investigation, issued a federal warrant for Leonard Voss. But the more they uncovered, the less sense any of it made. A man with no criminal record, a house designed like a trap, a camera that watched nothing, a room that remembered everything, and a girl still missing, somewhere, out there, or beneath, or worse, still watching back. In every horror story, there's a point of no return. For the case of Elise Brenner, that point came on January 9th, 2018, inside a climate-controlled storage unit in Clark Summit, Pennsylvania, rented under a fake name, paid in cash, registered to no one. But the name listed on the lock agreement? Voss. By now, authorities knew Leonard Voss wasn't just a quirky antique dealer with an affinity for Victorian furniture. He was something else entirely. Voss had built a secret museum of the macabre. Inside the unit, lit by a single overhead bulb and a backup generator, they found a vault of horrors. Stacked milk crates, dusty boxes, and filing cabinets that stretched back decades. The temperature-controlled room sat at a steady 62 degrees Fahrenheit, perfect for preserving fragile media. But this wasn't furniture. This wasn't heirlooms. This was a library of obsession. The label on the first box read, Category, Unsolved, Female, Northeast U.S., Subsection, Cold Cases, Media Artifacts. Inside, obituaries clipped from newspapers, police sketch composites, disposable cameras with undeveloped film, bits of clothing, scarves, gloves, earrings, each individually bagged and cataloged, and VHS tapes, dozens of them, old, degraded, but neatly labeled. Each tape bore a handwritten title. Some examples: A. Warner / Session 6. S. Hale / Session 3. J. Kelman / Pre-Session. Unknown, Gas Station Girl. And then Elise / Session 4. Timestamp, December 16th, 2017. 2 days after Elise disappeared. Detective Vasquez was the first to view it. Alone. The footage began with static, gray waves rolling like a television trying to remember a dream. Then a flicker. Then an image. A camera angle facing a cement room. Cold. Bare. Same room from the Polaroids. A girl sat in a chair, hands tied behind her, eyes covered with black gauze, barefoot, shivering. The grainy date in the corner read, December 16th, 17:14 a.m. And the girl, it was Elise. Her voice came through, faint and hoarse. Please, the ice. Can you stop the ice? She said it over and over, not screaming, not sobbing, pleading, as if she were freezing from the inside out. Vasquez rewound the tape, watched it again. The phrase repeated 8 times, each time more desperate. Please, please stop the ice. It's in my throat. Then silence. For 47 minutes, Elise didn't speak again. Just the sound of her breath. Unsteady, rhythmic, like she was waiting for something. The end of the tape was worse. At the 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 22 seconds mark, a sound emerged. Metal scraping, like a heavy latch being pulled. And a voice, male, calm, almost clinical. We're ready for the next layer. Then a whirring noise, like machinery powering on. The camera cut to black. Session over. Authorities were stunned. This wasn't a kidnapping. This wasn't random. This was ritualistic, documented, deliberate. And Elise wasn't the only one. Further into the storage unit, detectives discovered a master index, a binder marked, cataloged personalities. Inside, each missing person had their own file, handwritten notes in meticulous script, psychological profiles, behavior logs, session timelines, audio transcript excerpts. It was as if Voss wasn't just collecting victims, he was studying them. Elise's entry was 4 pages long. A sample note: subject exhibits adaptive detachment, resists visual stimuli, responds to auditory discomfort, especially irregular frequencies. Refer to Session 3 for vocal modulation test. Session 4 will commence full exposure to L pattern. Another excerpt, underlined twice: light manipulation triggers panic response. Useful. The unit also contained a locked metal trunk. When opened, it revealed a stack of burned CDs labeled Echo Sessions, microcassette tapes in red sleeves, a sealed envelope marked for the archivist, and one final item, a child's sketchbook. On the first page, in faded pencil, things that are cold but not ice. Inside, pages and pages of surreal drawings. A girl inside a snow globe, a house buried upside down in snow, an eye with frost crawling over it. And on one page, in crayon, the thing in the wall watches when you're asleep. Meanwhile, Voss remained missing. Interpol confirmed that Leonard Voss hadn't crossed any borders. But get this, the name Voss turned up in a psychiatric registry from 1954. Not Leonard, but Edward Voss. Admitted to Glenridge Asylum at age 13. Diagnosis: compulsive mnemonic retention, obsessive documentation, chronic dissociation. Treatment record ended in 1960. Listed as released to guardian custody. But no guardian was ever named. And here's the kicker: Glenridge Asylum officially shut down in 1961 after a fire consumed the East Wing. The cause? An explosion in the records archive. Detective Vasquez now had a theory. Leonard Voss and Edward Voss were the same person. And what Voss had been doing for the last 5 decades. Preserving, not people, not memories, but the moment of disappearance. That razor-thin line where a person stops being who they were and becomes something else. It wasn't just abduction. It was transformation. And the ice? It wasn't weather. It was part of the process. More tapes followed, each more unsettling than the last. Sessions where victims were asked to recite strange phrases, repeat numbers, react to sudden bursts of light. Session 7 with Stephanie Hale featured her whispering over and over, "It's colder when I remember." Jared Kellman's Session 2 included this chilling dialogue. "You said there were others. There are always others. Where are they? They're underneath. Under what? Us. So where was Voss? And more importantly, was Elise still alive? Because while most tapes showed subjects descending into silence and stillness, Elise's Session 4 ended with her looking directly into the camera, eyes uncovered, and saying, "You're not him." Then came the twist no one expected. At 2:06 a.m. on January 12th, the Millfield Public Library received an email. Subject line: archive submission / Session 5. No body text, just a link. The IP address was untraceable. The link self-destructed after one view, but the video was real, and it showed Elise, alive, no longer bound, sitting in the chair, staring directly at the camera, and whispering, "He left, but the house remembers." Then static, and a final frame, the symbol again. In every mystery, there comes a moment when the hunter becomes part of the hunt. For Millfield, that moment arrived not with a scream, not with a new tape, but with a fingerprint. One fingerprint, pulled from the Canon camera in the Hollow Pine Roadhouse. It didn't match Voss. It matched someone else. Detective Mason Keene, lead investigator, respected officer, and now a suspect. To the public, Keene was the face of the Elise Brenner investigation. Calm, stoic, the type who showed up early, left late, and said very little in between. Reporters called him unflappable. Parents called him reassuring. Colleagues called him a bit of a lone wolf. But what they didn't call him was transparent, because Keene had been hiding something. Several somethings, in fact. Starting with this, he'd quietly reopened 5 cold cases linked to the Hollow Pine area. Cases the department had long since closed. Cases they didn't know he was working on. Cases involving missing girls, icy nights, and one common denominator: Leonard Voss. When Vasquez confronted him, Keene didn't deny it. In fact, he seemed almost relieved. "It was never just Elise," he said. "Not to me." That's when he told her about Sarah. Sarah Keene was Mason's younger sister, 16 years old when she vanished in February 1998, while walking home from a winter study group in Scranton. No witnesses, no trace, just her backpack, found half buried in snow, 2 blocks from a condemned building slated for demolition. That building once housed archived medical records from Glenridge Asylum. Authorities at the time chalked it up to a runaway. Mason, just 22 then, was a cadet in the police academy. He never believed the official story, especially when, a year later, a VHS tape was mailed anonymously to his parents' house. No return address. On it, a girl who looked like Sarah, blindfolded, sitting in a chair, saying one phrase over and over: "It's quieter when I'm cold." That tape was lost in an evidence shuffle during a departmental move in 2003. But Keene never forgot it. He buried the memory behind a badge, behind the daily ritual of order and justice. But when Elise vanished, when the ICE references surfaced, it was like the world cracked open again. And underneath it all was Sarah. Keene began investigating Voss on his own in early 2017. He accessed sealed psychiatric files. He cross-referenced antique purchases with missing persons cases. He traced cash-only P.O. boxes, watched the old Voss Antiquities store for days at a time. And when the Hollow Pine property went cold in the snowstorm, he was the first one there, before the department, before Vasquez, before the mail carrier even made her call. That's how his fingerprint ended up on the camera, because he'd touched it, watched it, studied it. "I didn't tamper with the scene," he told Vasquez. "I documented it. I just didn't tell anyone." Which begged the question, was Mason Keene obsessed or involved? The department was divided. Some believed Keene had crossed ethical lines, but only out of desperation and trauma. Others believed it was worse. What if Voss hadn't been working alone? What if the obsession files weren't just his creation? What if there had been an accomplice all along? Someone within law enforcement. Someone who had access to victims, to case files, to department blind spots. Someone like Mason Keene. Then came the audio tape, found tucked behind a false panel in Voss's second storage unit in Stowe, Vermont. Labeled in red Sharpie, Session 0// The Initiator. The tape opened with a young woman crying, followed by 2 voices. One was Voss, the other was harder to place, smoother, quieter, measured. Here's a transcript of the final exchange. Female voice: "Please, I told you what you wanted." Male voice 1: "Voss, it's not about what we want." Male voice 2: "It's about what we remember." Voss: "They never understand until they're inside the snow." Female: "Please." Male voice 2: "Don't beg. You'll forget this part soon." Click. The recording ends. But analysis confirmed something else. The second male voice was a near match for Mason Keene. Keene denied everything. He claimed the voice was doctored, a setup, a manipulation. Vasquez wasn't sure what to believe, because here's the unsettling part. Keene's personal file had been flagged twice in the last year for unusual access patterns. He had looked up Elise Brenner's school schedule 2 weeks before she disappeared. He had visited the Glenridge Asylum ruins alone, and he had requisitioned infrared surveillance gear, the same kind Voss used without official authorization. Still, no concrete evidence tied him directly to Elise's abduction. And then came another twist. A survivor came forward. Her name was Marin Lowe, now 34, once a missing person from Connecticut, age 17. Vanished for 2 weeks in January 2007. Reappeared with no memory of where she'd been. Her story had been dismissed at the time, chalked up to drugs, trauma, dissociation. But when she saw the news coverage of Elise Brenner's case, it all came rushing back. She described a cold cement room, a chair bolted to the floor, a single light bulb, and a camera that never blinked. She also described two men, one old, one younger. The younger man, he wore a badge on his belt. I don't know if it was real, but he said he was with the investigation. Said I was part of a memory test. That I wouldn't understand now, but I would soon. When shown photos of both Voss and Keen, Marin hesitated, then pointed at Voss, and slowly at Keen. I think it was both. Suddenly, the case was no longer about a missing girl. It was about a system, pattern, a ritual passed down or maybe shared. One based not in lust, not even in power, but in memory, preserving it, twisting it, freezing it. Vasquez now faced an impossible choice. Pursue Voss, still missing, still ghost-like, or arrest her fellow officer. So far, no warrant had been issued, but Internal Affairs opened a sealed investigation into Mason Keen. He was placed on administrative leave. His final words to Vasquez? "You're looking at this wrong. Elise wasn't taken. She was chosen. And it's not over." And maybe he was right, because the night Keen was suspended, a new photo appeared on Elise's dormant Instagram. It was grainy, dark, low light, but unmistakable. It was Keen, standing alone in a forest, bare trees behind him, snow falling. Caption: "We all returned to the cold." Then the account deleted itself. By late February 2018, the world had begun to move on. The headlines faded. The hashtags slowed. Elise Brenner's face still hung on telephone poles in Millfield, but the paper was water-streaked, the ink running down like tears. Internally, the investigation had stalled. The leads had gone cold. Vasquez was chasing ghosts, and the public was losing interest, until one last package arrived. Unmarked, no return address. It was dropped off at the Millfield Police Department front desk just after midnight. No one saw who delivered it. Surveillance cameras? Glitched. Inside the package, 3 VHS tapes, 1 note, 6 words, typed on yellow paper. "This is the final memory." One tape stood out. Label: Elise // final. Vasquez personally loaded it into a secure player, flanked by FBI techs. The footage began like the others. Same room, same light, same chair, but Elise looked different. Calm, still, composed, like she wasn't being held, like she wasn't afraid, like she had become part of whatever this was. She stared just left of the camera lens. Her voice was low, barely a whisper. He said, he was born in room 117. Then silence. Not the kind where nothing is said. The kind where everything is. Room 117. No such room had ever appeared in Glenridge Asylum's floor plans. Vasquez had checked the blueprints herself. But the moment that name hit her ears, something inside her snapped into place. Not logic, not evidence, just instinct. 2 weeks later, the demolition of Glenridge Asylum began. A decades-long community eyesore finally coming down. Contractors prepared to level the final structure, the East Wing, gutted by fire in 1961. But when they brought down the wall between rooms 116 and 118, they found something that shouldn't have been there. A bricked-in space. No door, no window, just a sealed chamber like a memory someone wanted erased. They called Vasquez in. When the wall was broken, floodlights revealed a chamber roughly 11 feet by 11 feet. Cement walls, faint scorch marks, and on the back wall, a single word etched in soot. C. The floor was covered in Polaroids, exactly 27, each one depicting a different teenager, all missing, all cold case victims from surrounding states, each photo taken from the same angle, straight on, slightly tilted, like an eye that had never blinked. But the final photo, that's what made Vasquez stop breathing. It wasn't dusty, it wasn't faded, it was new. The timestamp was 2 days ago. The girl in the photo stood outside the Hollow Pine Roadhouse, wearing a red scarf, face tilted just slightly toward the lens. And in the bottom right corner of the photo, a gloved finger, still visible. Authorities scrambled. They locked down the Hollow Pine property, searched it top to bottom. Again, no signs of Voss, No signs of Keen. No signs of Elise. Just a fresh set of footprints leading into the woods and stopping at nothing. Then the final twist. The second tape in the package was labeled 117 / construction footage. It showed grainy, archival black and white film. Dated 1953. Glenridge Asylum under renovation. Workers pouring cement, laying brick, framing new rooms. And near the end, the camera caught a young boy, standing in the background, wearing a coat 2 sizes too large. He stared directly at the lens, and behind him, a chalkboard that read, "Welcome, Edward. Room 117 is ready." The third tape? Empty. Just 1 second of black. Then a flash of a symbol which is an eye, then static. The room was sealed. The asylum site bulldozed and fenced off. But nothing official came of it. The FBI classified the findings. The Voss investigation remains open. Mason Keen still missing, neither confirmed dead nor definitively involved. The Hollow Pine house was condemned and burned in an unexplained fire weeks later. No one was seen leaving the scene. As for Elise, her whereabouts remain unknown. But across message boards, dark web threads, and encrypted forums, people claim she's still uploading photographs. Strange ones, blurry images of frost, shadows, broken mirrors, each with cryptic captions. Light doesn't forget. He's not done. They're waking up. And the most recent, room 117 never closed. And so, the case of Elise Brenner, once believed to be a simple disappearance, ends not with a resolution, but with a reopening. Because there's one detail no one can explain. The girl in the final Polaroid, wearing the red scarf, she wasn't Elise. She was someone new. And the cycle may have already begun again.